Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, as-salatu wa-salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are on which surah? Surah An-Naml, very good. We're on Surah An-Naml, Surah number 27. So last class we spoke briefly about Surah Al-Shu'ara. Do you remember the activity we did with Surah Al-Shu'ara?
Yes.
The quiet crickets, very good. Yes?
The dialogue between Sayyidina.
Yes, very good. It was, do you remember the debate, the great debate between Musa and Fir'aun? And remember we went through and we analyzed the tactics that Fir'aun used and how Musa alayhi salam was able to overcome the power plays and flip the entire dynamic of that gathering and making Fir'aun become very aggressive and frustrated. One thing I did want to highlight in Surah Al-Shu'ara is an interesting verse towards the end. So it's called, so what does Shu'ara mean? The poets, right? The poets. Now Surah Al-Shu'ara is the signs of Allah's might and mercy through the generations that have passed. And right at the end is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the poets, which is why the surah is named Shu'ara. So here it's very interesting. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He rebuts the idea that the Quraysh claimed that the Prophet ﷺ was receiving inspiration from jinn or the dark forces and that sort of thing, right? So He says, هَلْ أُنَبِّئُكُمْ عَلَى مَنْ تَنَزَّلُ الشَّيَاطِينَ? Shall I inform you upon whom the devils actually descend upon? تَنَزَّلُ عَلَى كُلِّ أَفَّاكٍ أَثِيمٍ. They descend upon every sinful liar. It's interesting, it's kind of scary too. So if we say that, so the angels descend upon the prophets, the angels also descend upon people who defend the integrity of the prophets. Does anyone know the evidence for that? Does anyone know the evidence for that?
Is that what the Prophet Muhammad's Khadija radiallahu anha's someone?
I don't know if that's a complete sentence, sister. That was Khadija's someone somewhere.
Khadija radiallahu anha's uncle?
Yeah, oh yes, Waraqa bin Nawfal, yes.
He defended, like he mentioned that, you know, oh gosh, they're going to give you a hard time. I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Like, would that be the kind of people?
No, that's not the evidence that angels descend upon people who are defending the Prophet ﷺ. Yes.
When Hassan ibn Thabit was defending the honor of Rasulullah.
Perfect, very good. Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, who was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was defending with his poetry to the Quraysh as they were doing their war propaganda. So he's responding to them in this form of nadr, which is like this diss poetry that they used to do. And as he's doing it, and the lyrics are coming to his head, and it's all impromptu, he's not planning it, then the Prophet ﷺ told him, continue, for verily the Ruhul Qudus is with you. The Holy Spirit is with you as you are doing this. And so who is the Ruhul Qudus? Jibreel alayhi salam. So this is the evidence that if you are defending the Prophet ﷺ publicly, then angels come down. In the case of Hassan ibn Thabit, it was Jibreel alayhi salam. But angels come down to support you. Now how do angels come down and support you when you're spitting bars at people? Not that you guys do that. Is anyone here a good lyricist here? You guys good impromptu rappers here? No? Oh, come on. Bismillah. I was going to try to get you guys to do something. Nobody? Okay. How are the angels supporting Hassan ibn Thabit?
By inspiration.
By inspiration? What do you mean by that?
Like he would know what to say and how to defeat those guys.
Okay, so so the angel is speaking to Hassan ibn Thabit? Maybe? Okay.
I'm guessing.
But we're saying that this principle extends so that if you're defending the Prophet ﷺ, then will we see angels speak to us as well?
We don't have to see,
Okay, very good.
we can be inspired.
Yes, very good. So, we know about the waswas of the khannas, the retreating whisperer, as Allah mentions in Surah An-Nas. We know about the waswas of the shayateen. We know about the whispering of the devils. But do we know about the waswas of the malaika? Authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that actually mentions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has appointed a shaitan and an angel for an individual, and the angel whispers good thoughts into the hearts and minds of the believers. And obviously the shaitan whispers negative thoughts and evil thoughts. And so there's actually one narration that mentions that in the end of the night, before you go to bed, the shaitan and the angel rush to the person. And the shaitan is rushing, trying to whisper what? Saying, finish it with evil. Finish it with evil. And the angel's coming and saying, finish it with good. What is the it? It's the day, it's the night. Finish the day, finish the night with evil, finish the night with good. And so both of these are coming towards you right before you're entering into your bed to go to sleep. And so this is the waswas of the malaika. And the waswas of the malaika are positive. And so inspiring good thoughts, as you were mentioning. And so, I don't know if anyone has witnessed this, but if anyone's been asked to have to explain Islam or discuss Islam in a public setting, the words just come and flow sometimes. Thoughts and ideas come and flow sometimes. You don't draw the blank. Potentially that is from the angels, if you're sincere, from the angels that are coming and supporting you in your task of explaining Islam, defending the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, coming back to this, who do the devils descend upon? So they descend upon every sinful liar. So what does that mean? That when a person, afakun athim, so when a person is afak from the pattern of fa'al, which is basically doing something repeatedly, you're repeatedly doing something, a habitual liar, you can say. Someone who constantly makes up things, makes up stories. It can be making up things about themselves, making up to make themselves look good, or making up things about other people to make them look bad, embellishing stories, just lying for their own personal gain, afak. So the shayateen actually descend upon those people. The shayateen descend upon those people. And so what are the shayateen doing then? They're inspiring them, giving them more material, giving them more material to make people laugh, to mock another person, to backbite, make it alluring to that person, stir up different things. So the shaitan is coming upon these people. Now, what's interesting, then it says, يُلْقُونَ السَّمْعَ وَأَكْثَرُهُمْ كَاذِبُونَ. They pass on what is heard and most of them are liars. وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ. And the poets, the deviators, those who are deviant basically, follow them. أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ. And then Allah goes on and describes the negative aspect of the shu'ara. So, the devils are descending upon these liars, and Allah is mentioning the poets and those who follow them. This is a really fascinating point about the connection between art and the shaitan. Now before, I know this sounds a bit of an extreme statement where I say all art is satanic, but the Quran is very interesting here because poetry is obviously a form of art. It's a creative form. It's not an analytical form. You're not using the logic part of your brain. You are creating ideas, concepts, words, putting them together. You're creating rhyme patterns. What's interesting is the connection between art and satanic influences, I guess we can say. And this is something that you see when you look at the entire genre of art, in fact. When you look at art in general, in any culture, you find that they're the ones who push the boundaries the most. You look at visual arts, and the type of nudity that you see in the visual arts. You look at things like poetry, you look at music, you look at theater, you look at film, you look at all these different art forms, and you find that they become mechanisms to actually influence a society and turn them away from God and toward their desires. This is the case that you see, that much of the art that's out there is designed to actually take people away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of the art form is there to stir up desires. The art form becomes a proxy or a mouthpiece for the shaitan. And this connects because, there's that form of the isti'adha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم من همزه ونفخه ونفثه. I seek refuge in Allah from shaitan. We know that part. Some people don't know this part, which is also from the sunnah. من همزه ونفخه ونفثه. The hums of the shaitan is the poking and prodding of the shaitan that drives a person insane. The nafakh of the shaitan is the blowing of the shaitan that blows and puffs up a person with pride and arrogance. The nafath, that's the nafth of the shaitan, noon fa tha, it's translated, people translate as whistling. There's not a good translation of nafath, really. We don't really have an English equivalent, but like, it's like people say whistling or that sort of thing, a dry spit or whatnot. But basically, what is this explained as? This is the music of the shaitan that he uses to incite desires and take people away from Islam. And so this connection that people always find, and there's a reason why in Islam you will find a lot of cautionary ahkam in regards to the arts. A lot of restrictions when it comes to art in Islam. The restrictions when it comes to visual arts, the restrictions when it comes to the arts related to the sound with regards to musical instruments. Musical instruments have been frowned upon from the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions and the tabi'un and onwards. Very, very few, you can count them on the fingers of your hand, of people who would permit for religious nasheed sort of things. But outside of that, across the board prohibition. But it comes back to this concept that art is something that the shaitan can easily hijack and manipulate for its own use, because the shaitan descends upon that person who's trying to dig deep and trying to create something or make something creative, and they go against their aql. It's different to the aql, it's different than revelation, of course, as well. And so they go into this space where they're maybe inciting desires and fantasies and these sorts of things. And so that's that connection. By the way, you might think, okay, I'm saying this. You look at some of these rock and roll stars, you can read the statements themselves. They literally say, oh, I sold my soul to the devil for good, in exchange for good music skill. Or this particular song, you see them talk about it where they go up on stage and they were all playing in unison. They're like, we never practiced that song ever before. It all just came out and we were all just in unison at that moment. Who's inspiring this? So the shaitan uses art forms often to push agendas. And that's why media is such a powerful mechanism for influencing the thought, ideology, and values of society. Film and music and all these different ways are the ways in which the West continued to move away from Christianity and started to go towards a more secular framing of things. And their values changed in regards to sexual ethics, for example. Media played a pivotal role in that, and it continues to play a pivotal role to push certain narratives, to inspire people, to push certain agendas forward. So it's interesting because the Quran mentions this here in Surah Al-Shu'ara. And of course I go on one of my tangents and we are quite behind. Okay, Bismillah. By the way, I saw a massive bag of mangoes back there. Bismillah. I know it says please take one per person. If someone can bring it here to the front, inshallah, then we can give them out as prizes, inshallah. Okay, Surah An-Naml. Surah An-Naml, in a sentence, follow the miraculous guidance of the Quran to save yourselves from the fate of those who deny. So Surah Al-Shu'ara mentions all the different stories of the prophets in a very brief form. And Surah An-Naml will mention a very specific story.
He's saying the mangoes are really soft, so don't throw them.
Oh, okay. The mangoes are very what?
They're soft.
Oh, they're soft, so don't throw. Okay. Jazakumullah khairan. Barakallah feek. That's our little secret, by the way, the dent in the wall. That didn't come from me. Anyways, so Surah An-Naml, follow the miraculous guidance of the Quran to save yourselves from the fate of those who deny. So Surah An-Naml discusses the miraculous guidance of the Quran and its centrality, but also Surah An-Naml features a very important story, which is the story of Bilqis and Sulaiman alayhi salam. And this is the story of the ants that are talking, the birds that are talking. And you know, subhanAllah, the Quran, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ صَرَّفْنَا لِلنَّاسِ فِي هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ مِنْ كُلِّ مَثَلٍ. We have diversified this Quran with many different examples, many different forms, many different types of reminders. Ibn al-Qayyim mentions this, that Ibn Taymiyyah mentions this, that one of the miracles of the Quran is how diverse its content is. And when you look at the stories of the Quran, it's not just one type of story. You know, you have like certain authors, they can only write one type of like fiction, right? So like there's the murder mystery person, there's the fantasy novelist, there's like the one series person, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, there's the romance, there's all these different genres, usually one author for one particular genre. But the Quran, you'll find the stories, they span every genre. They span every genre. From politics to tragedy to mystery. Yes, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. That's all about mystery and the whodunit, what's going on. If you want fantasy, now not fantasy in the sense that it hasn't happened, na'udhu billah, but that concept, you know, people like those stories like that, right? They're attracted to stories of a world that is different, or a world that's, you know, very unique, and there's different, the laws seem a bit different, things are a bit different than they actually are. SubhanAllah, Allah gives you not a fantasy, but Allah gives you a real world example of a time in which there's these fantastic and incredible characters, and you know, a talking bird, a person that can understand how the animals are interacting, the ants are speaking, the jinnat are coming through, they're building palaces. It's its own world, subhanAllah, and Allah builds this world in Surah An-Naml and explains it as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes and He mentions this. First He mentions briefly story of Musa alayhi salam. So He gives an example of a tyrant ruler. Then after that, He gives the example of a just ruler, Sulaiman alayhi salam. So first is a civilization that was destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of oppression. Next, Allah will describe a civilization that remained because of the justice, and a civilization that wasn't destroyed because they listened to the guidance, the miraculous guidance that came to him. Who was that? That was Bilqis. When Sulaiman came with the letter, and she's seeing Sulaiman's incredible kingdom, and she recognizes the miracles that Sulaiman is able to do, bringing forward the arsh, just like this, all these things that are happening, she recognizes and submits. So you see the parallel. You see the parallel. See, in the beginning of the surah, Allah says, تِلْكَ آيَاتُ الْقُرْآنِ وَكِتَابٌ مُبِينٌ. Those are the verses of the Quran, a clear book, هُدًى وَبُشْرًى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So Allah mentions and focuses on the miraculous guidance of the Quran. Then later Allah mentions the story of a person who accepts miraculous guidance, which is Bilqis accepting the guidance that she sees and the miracles that she witnesses from Sulaiman alayhi salam. And so the parallel is for us as well to say, if we want to be saved, then we have to follow the miraculous guidance of the Quran. And then afterwards, so this is the story that's mentioned here. And I want to, that's okay. I was going to do an activity, but I'm sorry, my poet and art rant took up the time for that. But we'll do, there's another activity coming, inshallah. After this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then describes civilizations that have been destroyed before for failure to follow the miraculous guidance. Now towards the end of this surah, it's interesting. There's a mention of one of the major signs of the Day of Judgment. Does anyone know which major sign of the Day of Judgment is mentioned in Surah An-Naml? Which major sign of the Day of Judgment is mentioned in Surah An-Naml? For a mango. Yes.
The beast of the earth.
The beast of the earth. Very good. Can I roll them? Bismillah. The dabba. The dabbata min al-ard. The beast is mentioned in Surah An-Naml. So I'll just get to the verse here of Surah An-Naml. It's verse 82. وَإِذَا وَقَعَ الْقَوْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ. And when the word befalls them, what is the word here? Different interpretations. Basically, when the Day of Judgment comes towards the end, or when a person reaches the end of all of their chances, essentially, أَخْرَجْنَا لَهُمْ دَابَّةً مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ. We will extract from the earth a dabba. So where is this creature coming from? It's not a trick question, guys. It's like literally there. I just said it. From the earth. Very good. Alhamdulillah. It's like, it's a trick question. It's like from a spaceship, from Mars. Elon Musk is going to come, and then it's going to come from Mars, from the earth, from there, right? Who knows? أَخْرَجْنَا لَهُمْ دَابَّةً مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ. So he's going to come from deep within the earth. He's actually going to emerge from the earth. This dabba. تُكَلِّمُهُمْ, and he'll speak. أَنَّ النَّاسَ كَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا لَا يُقِنُونَ. I thought that this was interesting, that at the end of the surah, Allah mentions the dabba that speaks. And at the beginning of the surah, Allah mentions the story of Sulaiman with all the different dawab and all the different creatures that were speaking. That Allah can cause them to speak, so why are you so amazed of this creature that's coming now from the earth? So, what is he going to say? He's going to say, as per the Quran, أَنَّ النَّاسَ كَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا لَا يُقِنُونَ. The people were of our verses not certain. Now, what is this dabba? What does he look like? Is it a he, an it, or a she? There are many narrations about the dabba. Most of them are not authentic. You'll find a lot of different descriptions in the books of tafsir. Ibn Kathir, he has a book called Bidayah wa Nihaya. It literally is the beginning and the end, and it's literally his, that there's that author who wrote a short history of the world. That's literally what Ibn Kathir wrote. From the beginning, Adam, all the way to the end, which is Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is Bidayah wa Nihaya, and then Jannah and Nar. So he literally wrote this narrative of everything from Adam alayhi salam all the way to the end. It's called Bidayah wa Nihaya. So towards the end, when he's talking about the Nihaya, he brings forth some narrations about the dabba. There's some weaknesses. It's not very weak, but there are some weaknesses to them. So with a grain of salt, but just a bit of the more details about this dabba. So number one, there is a narration that suggests that the dabba will actually emerge 3 times from the earth. The first time will be from a desert close to Mecca, but far away from Mecca, but in the vicinity of Mecca. So he'll come out and he'll be hidden. People will not recognize him, and he'll go back and remain hidden. So he'll come out, not anyone will really see him. His news will not reach Mecca, basically. Then he'll go back in. Then he'll come out a second time, and some people will see him and recognize him, but the news of his arrival will not reach Mecca. Then he goes back. Then he comes back, and at this point in time, he emerges and he's seen between the Rukn and the Maqam Ibrahim. So he's literally in the Haram, right in front of the Kaaba. And the narrations say there's dust all over his head, because obviously he's been on the earth. And at that moment in time, everyone will freak out. Everyone will freak out and they'll start running away, but the true believers will remain firm because they know that they cannot escape Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, and so they will remain firm. And this is a beautiful point as well about the strength of the believers connected to their belief in Al-Qadr. Our beliefs, our aqidah, are not abstract and theological. They have practical manifestations. And there's a real cultural aspect of Muslims that come from their understanding of Qadr, which is the courage, bravery, strength, and ability and resilience of Muslims in general. That Muslims are people who have this strong belief and conviction that whatever comes to them, was destined to come to them. And whatever misses them was destined to miss them. And so there's a sense of rida and contentment that naturally comes to a believer. And there's a sense of strength that comes to a believer as well. You guys have seen those videos of like during the earthquakes in Indonesia, the Imam, he's praying and like the congregation goes and the Imam continues to pray and he's like holding the pillar as everything is shaking. And those people that left, they see the Imam that is still praying, they come back and they come back as they're shaking for the earthquake. This is the strength we're talking about here. They didn't train for that. It's not like they knew that that's going to happen. But when a person internalizes the belief that everything in Allah's control, they're able to have that thabat and remain firm. And that's something that's really important for Muslims to recognize as well. Emotional regulation, regulating our anxiety, regulating our emotions as well, are connected to our belief in Al-Qadr as well. Because anxiety comes from uncertainty, the uncertainty of what's going to happen in the future. And Al-Qadr comes with the certainty that Allah is the one that's in control. So that's the thabat that comes through. We should put the video up on here, but anyways, maybe we'll have a person on the computer. We'll have like a computer person, and then we'll say, "Hey, can you pull this up?" You know, on the podcast they say that. Say, "Hey, can you pull this one up?" Yeah, put it up, Jamie. We need to convert Brother Jamie and bring him here, inshallah. Yeah. Okay, so he'll come through. Everyone will freak out. The believers will stay steadfast, and then the beast will come and will basically mark the believers, and there'll be light on their faces. Then the dabba will go throughout the earth, and the narrations say no one is able to catch it. So some people are going to be trying to contain this beast. Now, how large is this beast? Some of the narrations say that his head is basically at the sky, and he's like this large person and beast. And they say like the eyes of a fox, the ears of the elephant, and all these different things. But these are all very weak. We don't give any credence to these particular descriptions. So Allah Ta'ala alam, how large he is. But there will be people who are going to be trying to rein him in, but they're going to be unable to. And no one can escape when he comes. But what is he trying to do? He's not going to hurt anybody. He's coming to basically relay the judgment from Allah and make that judgment apparent on your forehead. So scary. So the narration actually mentions that he'll come to a person and the person will try to kind of shoo away the dabba by saying, Allahu Akbar. It's like, I'm praying now, so the dabba is not going to come. And then the beast will come behind him and say, oh, now you're praying. SubhanAllah. So this is a person that left, didn't pray, wasn't a real Muslim, whatever it may be, or maybe wasn't a Muslim and then pretending to be one. It's like, oh, so now you're praying. And then he'll mark him. And so basically at that point in time, humanity will be divided into believer and disbeliever. To the point that after the dabba leaves and did his task here, there will still be time in which humanity is with each other. And at this point in time, before the souls of the believers are all taken, they'll be doing tijara and they'll be referring to each other as, oh so-and-so, oh kafir, or mu'min, because they'll see the mark on the person. And that's how they will then describe the other people because of that being there. So that is the dabba, and that is mentioned in Surah An-Naml. That is mentioned in Surah An-Naml. By the way, for those who are interested, if you read the beginning of Surah An-Naml, the same words that are used to describe Sulaiman with the army that are basically in rows and in ranks are used to describe the Day of Judgment. And they're very unique words to the surah. Like for example here, حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءُوا قَالَ أَكَذَّبْتُمْ بِآيَاتِي وَلَمْ تَحِيطُوا بِهَا عِلْمًا. You rejected my signs and you did not encompass them in knowledge. Now for those who are familiar with the surah, we didn't go through it. Who said this in the surah of Sulaiman? It was the bird to Sulaiman. أَحَدْتُ بِمَا لَمْ تُحِيطُ بِعِلْمٍ. I come with you with knowledge that you do not encompass in knowledge. So the same phrase is used there. أَمَّا ذَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. Sorry, no. Over here as well. وَيَوْمَ نَحْشُرُ مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ فَوْجًا مِمَّنْ يُكَذِّبُ بِآيَاتِنَا فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. That we will gather from every nation a company of those who deny our signs, and they will be driven in rows. فَهُمْ يُوزَعُونَ. And this is also used to describe the army of Sulaiman alayhi salam. يُوزَعُونَ, in rows. So the same words that are used there. And then وَوَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمَا ظَلَمُوا فَهُمْ لَا يَنْطِقُونَ. Then the decree will fall upon them and they won't be able to speak as the birds and the ants able to speak, they won't be able to speak. يَنْطِقُونَ. And so there's this parallel between the beginning and the end here at the end of Surah An-Naml. Now we move on to Surah Al-Qasas. Surah Al-Qasas is a surah that, does anyone know the sabab al-nuzul of Surah Al-Qasas? No, the sabab al-nuzul. When was it circumstances of revelation, when was it revealed? In the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. It was revealed during the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ, Surah Al-Qasas. And this is actually very appropriate. You guys tell me the connection between Surah Qasas and the hijrah.
The story of Sayyidina Musa,
Yes, what about it?
when he kicked from Egypt to Ta'if.
Very good, Ukhti, very good. So, there's actually the part in the Quran that mentions the story of Musa, the details of Musa leaving Egypt and then staying in Madian and then going back to Egypt. That detail is only mentioned in Surah Qasas. And this is an amazing parallel because that was the story that the Prophet ﷺ was experiencing in that moment in his own life. Because he was making hijrah from Mecca, being turned and driven away from his people, fleeing to Medina. And so during that journey, Allah reveals the story of Musa alayhi salam's hijrah. And so that's where you get the details of the story of Musa alayhi salam's hijrah. And so Musa alayhi salam, he and the circumstances behind that, him hitting the man and the man falling dead from that, and then the authorities coming after him, and then he runs away and he goes and he finds he goes basically, he gets to Madian, وَلَمَا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ قَالَ عَسَى رَبِّي أَن يَهْدِيَنِي سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. And there's the very famous, there's a very famous incident, of course, which then leads him to be able to actually find his future spouse. And there's a lot of very beautiful lessons to derive from this part of the story in regards to gender relations, in regards to how Musa alayhi salam was as a man chivalrous towards the young girls that were there, the two women that were there, trying to get some water to take back where all the other people were coming with their flock at that moment. Firstly, the haya of the women, not wanting to just bud themselves in with the men without any care, obviously having that haya and waiting for them. Then the haya of the woman works alongside the chivalry of the man, who then sees and notices that and then gives the appropriate space for the woman. If the woman is like this and no one ever gives them space, then she's never going to be able to drink towards the end of the day, right? And that's what pushes then women to then have to then go and push themselves, etc., etc. And without the chivalry of the man, then it doesn't allow for the modesty aspect of them. So they come hand in hand in that regard. And so then he goes and he says, okay, I'm going to do this for them. And this is an important part as well for us. Sometimes, as I said, I've said this before as well, sometimes for practicing Muslim brothers, if they see a muhajjaba sister, maybe on the sidewalk or something like this, and they look like they have a need, they'll run in the other direction, like they'll flee. Farrat min qaswara, like they're running from a lion, like, oh my goodness, let's get out of here, right? There's that, and it's coming from a sense of shyness, but this is not a prophetic kind of methodology. The believing men and women, Allah says in Surah At-Tawbah, are awliya ba'duhum ba'du awliya ba'd, that they are allies to one another. And there are boundaries to be set to ensure that boundaries are not crossed. And there are shari'i ahkam about hijab and what is to be covered and the way in which interaction should be and speaking and that sort of thing for people who are not mahram. And this is something that's really important, like things like khalwa and touching and that sort of thing. But it's really important to balance this with the idea of chivalry and for women to feel generally taken care of by the men within the community. And that's really important. And that's an important pillar of what it means to have a actual community of believing men and women. And sometimes people make it unnecessarily awkward, that it actually has to be to ask, is everything okay? Do you need anything? Okay, do I need to call you an Uber? Do you need help with this, etc., etc.? And you find out what the need is. And this is actually the example you see from Musa alayhi salam. He says to them, "Ma khatbukuma." And you see, Musa didn't say, "Hey, how you going? How's it going? Nice weather we're having, hey? It's a bit hot, isn't it?" No, it was right to the point. He came in and he said basically, in our vernacular, "Is everything okay? What's going on? What's happening? Is everything all right?" قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر الرعاء. And they explained their predicament. So he went, he fulfilled their need, and that was that. And then after that, they go back and they tell their father, and their father is not saying, "Oh, why are you speaking to these strange men? What do you mean?" Like, sometimes that happens as well. What happened? "Oh, this person, you were speaking to strange men. Oh, that looks horrible, and it's going to be looking like very bad, and people are going to talk, and they're going to gossip about you now that you were speaking to this person, and what was going on? Do we know who he was? Oh, he's a stranger. We don't even know who he is. He's not even from here." It wasn't anything like that. In fact, the father said, "That was really nice of the man who did that. I want to thank him." And he sends his daughter out to thank him. Now, obviously, you're a father. You have two unmarried daughters. You hear about a man who's done something nice. You can read between the lines here in this verse. He's sending out his daughter to go thank the person, right? To go thank the person. Now this, clearly he's also thinking, it's going to become very clear what he's actually thinking later on as well, but that's clearly on his mind, right? And so this is another thing as well that is sometimes we make marriage very difficult, and the idea of getting to know a prospect or anything like this, very difficult, again, very awkward. This is something culturally that in certain cultures would never fly, right? Someone does something and then you send the daughter out to say, "Hey, my father wants to thank you." Like some cultures, and that's where we need to say there's a difference between the culture and Islam. Those are two different things. And sometimes the culture can be more protective and sometimes it can be less. Certainly in Western culture, it's the opposite problem, right? There is no ghira at all for their women. And then obviously in some other cultures that are there, it sometimes is imbalanced and more so than what's actually required from the Sharia. So she goes and she says, "My father wants to repay you for what you did for us and reward you." And so he goes and they walk back, and the narrations mention that he came from basically the front, and then they would basically throw the stones into which directions he needed to go. Again, along the way, they're not just chit-chatting and whatnot. These are two unmarried, marriageable people, so there's obviously the shyness there, and they're not just going like in this regard. And it's not clear that this is a marriage sort of situation at this stage as well. So they're going with modesty, and they're going back to the parents, or to the father. And then Musa alayhi salam basically unloads the story, coming from an oppressive place, and he's running away. وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَص قَالَ لَا تَخَفْ. And sorry, I mentioned Shu'aib. Some people say it's Shu'aib, but we don't obviously know that. He says, the father says, "Don't be afraid. نَجَوْتَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ." We've saved you. You've escaped from the wrongdoing people, basically. And then then one of the women says, "Why don't you hire him? Why don't you hire him?" And again, you can read between the lines. The father then recognizes what the daughter is thinking, and so the daughter is saying to hire him, and he goes and gives a proposal. So the father switched on. He understands his daughters, right? The daughter didn't say, "I'm interested in him for marriage." The daughter just said, "Oh," the daughter praised him, right? She said, "Why don't you hire him? Inna khayra man ista'jarta al-qawi al-amin." She subtly praised him. He didn't say, "Oh, he's so strong in this. Look at the shyness." He said, "You should hire him. The best people you can hire are those who are strong and trustworthy." So she kind of gave that indication, right? So she's praising this person now. So the father gets the idea. And again, culturally, this wouldn't fly sometimes in some households, right? Can you imagine a sister going home to the father and saying, talking about a particular brother and saying, "Hey, I met this brother here. He helped me with this. He's XYZ. Like, what are you saying? How dare you say this? You're not supposed to have those feelings. What's going on here? It's haram. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah," right? But what does the father say here? "Inni uridu an unkihaka ihda ibnatay hatayn." I intend to wed you, one of my daughters. And then the mahar is basically the hiring there for basically him basically giving him a job. Now, It's interesting here, the actual time clause is mentioned. Now, as a rule and as the default, the Quran does not mention details in a story. Numbers, places, even names aren't really mentioned. The detailed contract is mentioned here, interestingly. أنت أجرني ثمانية حجج فإن أتممت عشرا فمن عندك. Like, even the conditional clause is mentioned here, and the exact time is mentioned as well. This, I had a thought about this. With a grain of salt, it's not anything definitive, but it connects to a few things that I've already mentioned. Why do you guys think that Allah is mentioning these two numbers here? It's a bit of a riddle. Like, any time, by the way, the detail is mentioned, you need to pay really good attention, because there's a reason why that detail is being mentioned, because normally it's not. But like here it's mentioned 8 years, and if you want to complete, then the 10 will be for you. But 8 is what is required. Think about what I meant. Yes?
To show us that we should always go for the best. Cool.
Okay, very good. You're right in that regard. So I would like the idea of, there's the bare minimum and then there's the higher level. That's very true. That's a good call. But why the numbers mentioned in particular? What is its connection? Give you a hint. To the sabab an-nuzul. To the circumstance. What was the sabab an-nuzul for the surah? What was it? The hijrah, right? Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca. Musa alayhi salam left Madian. Yes?
Is it because Fatih Mecca happened
Which year?
العام الثامن هجرة?
Yes, 8th year. And then, when did the Prophet ﷺ pass away? 10th year. Jazakum khairan. Bismillah. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Because at the end of this surah, so the Prophet ﷺ is leaving Mecca, and he's obviously sad that he's leaving, and he said, I would never have left you if the people didn't drive me away. And he's obviously thinking, am I going to be able to come back? Are they going to become Muslim, right? So he's leaving at this moment. There's a story of Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam goes to Madian, very similar term to Medina even in of itself. And he's there between 8 to 10 years. Then he goes back to Egypt. He goes back to Egypt. And what happens then? He then defeats the Fir'aun, and the Bani Israel is saved. And then he leaves. So with the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at his seerah, he goes and he comes back to Mecca 8 years, but then he goes back to Medina, because he had a choice at that point to come back to Mecca or to go back to Medina, and he chose to stay back in Medina and to establish that as his city for 2 years, and then he returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a verse here, right at the end, إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى مَعَادٍ. Indeed, the one who basically imposed the Quran upon you will take you back to the place of return. Now the Mufassirun, they mentioned this can mean two things. Will bring you back to Mecca, or bring you back, meaning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so wallahu ta'ala alam, it's very interesting that 8 and 10 is mentioned, and then that was literally the exact same amount of time for the Prophet ﷺ for his hijrah as well. 8 years, he goes and conquers, and then فَإِنْ أَتْمَمْتَ عَشْرًا فَمِنْ عِنْدِكَ. Then it was up to the Prophet ﷺ if he wanted to stay or if he wanted to go back to Medina. He goes back to Medina for the next 2 years, and then he returns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So this is Suratul Qasas that goes through the story of Musa alayhi salam in his hijrah to give thabat to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he is going through his own hijrah journey, and to give comfort. Look at what happened with Musa. He left, he gained family, he gained strength, he goes back, but he goes back and he's able to save his people. So too, Ya Rasulullah, لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى مَعَادٍ. You'll go back to Mecca and you'll go back as a conqueror. Alrighty. Surah An-Kabut. Surah An-Kabut is a surah that's clearly about tests. Allah mentions here right from the beginning. أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do the people think that they'll be left to say we believe and they will not be tested? It's a very, very powerful verse. وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. We've tested those before, and Allah will make evident those who are truthful, and He will make evident those who are liars. And so tests will come to distinguish between the hypocrites and the believers. Yes? Oh, zoom in, yeah. And so the rest of the surah goes through the stories of the prophets and the tests and the struggles. It focuses on the struggle of the prophets. So in Surah An-Kabut is when it's mentioned, Nuh alayhi salam preached to his people for 950 years. Because this surah is about tests coming down for people and the struggle and the difficulty. And did you think it would be easy for you to just say you're Muslim and that's it? Do you think it would be that easy? But you're going to be tested until you are separated. Those who truly believe in Allah, believe His promises and act in accordance with that, and those who will drop it at the first stroke of difficulty and hardship. And we spoke about how Gaza was one of those issues that really separated for people to see who are the people that were willing to, got to be careful with my words these days. Who are the people that were willing to sacrifice personal comfort, time, money, position and status based on their connections with different political figures and politicians, based on whatever it may be. Gaza was one of those things that really made it clear who are the people that truly had that sense of brotherhood with the ummah, and who are the people that could literally care less, and who are the people that would say, oh, we just need to give up about this whole issue of Gaza and Palestine. Who are the people that really clearly didn't really care too much about the ummah? Who are the people that didn't want to have to put in the work? That's what I'll say about that. And it doesn't have to be something major like this on a community level. It could be on an individual level as well. That you're going through a personal test and Allah is wanting to see, are you going to turn back to Him from this? Is this going to break you or is this going to build you? Is your iman so fragile and fake that the test that comes down will just blow it apart? Or is it actually built with true sweat and ibadah and genuine iman that it will withstand the trial of the fitna? That is the question. And so Allah mentions the long preaching of Nuh alayhi salam. Allah mentions the struggle of Ibrahim against his people who tried to execute him. Allah mentions the struggle of Lut alayhi salam against his people. Allah mentions the struggles of Shu'aib, Hud, Salih, Musa against their people. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that, and this is why it gets the name Al-Ankabut, which is the spider. Because, does anyone know why? What's mentioned in Surah Ankabut? Yes?
The parable of the spider web, isn't it?
Yes, very good. The parable of the spider web that's mentioned here. مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتا وإن أوهن البيوت لبيت العنكبوت لو كانوا يعلمون. The example of those who take allies other than Allah, basically those who commit shirk, those who, it's more than just about an idol, like a physical idol, but it's the idea that when you have a worldview that connects your purpose, meaning in life to something other than Allah, like your ultimate aim in life, your ultimate pursuit, your ultimate concern, the things that you attach to, the things you depend on for your sense of self-worth, for your sense of self-esteem, these things that you're deeply psychologically attached to, if that is besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the example of the fragility of the false ideologies, the pursuits that you're engaged in, the attachments that you had, the fragility of that is like the fragility of the spider's web. وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ لَبَيْتُ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. And so, when you look at a spider's web, and there's many that we have around here, is great huntsman spiders and stuff everywhere, right? You can see them. If you've ever had the opportunity to see like a spider actually spinning its web, it's one of the most incredible, beautiful things, subhanAllah, of the spider spinning its web and literally putting it together, and you're thinking, subhanAllah, like, who inspired the spider here? In any case, Allah is mentioning this example of the weakness and the fragility of false ideologies. And this is connected to this theme of the surah, because the surah is about fitna and about trial and about, is it going to break you or is it going to build you? And the idea that any worldview other than Islam will crush with the weight of the fitna of this world. And we spoke about this many times, about collectively as a culture, the West was unable to go through the trials and the fitna of this life with the world wars and the false ideologies of their deviated understanding of Christianity. It was unable to survive that weight because it was fragile, just like the spider's web. That when there was hardship, they dropped the concept of God. Whereas the Muslim and the believer, whether you look at the Rohingya, whether you look at what's happening in Yemen, whether you look at Palestine and Gaza, the occupation and the ihtilal and the apartheid actually made the Palestinians stronger Muslims. If you look at Palestine before apartheid and you look at it now, it's very different in regards to the religious commitment of the Palestinian people. Despite the intense and immense barbarity, occupation, and the invasions and the tortures and the way in which they treated the women and the Nakba, all these things, it was strong enough to withhold the fitna, and so it didn't break them, it actually built their iman. And that's the difference between false ideologies and the true ideology of Islam. Some people, I should say, not scholars, mention this idea of the inna awhan al-buyuti labaytul ankabut, with the idea of the black widow. Have you guys heard this before? So they say that not only is the fragility that's mentioned here, Wallahu alam if this is intended, but it's interesting. So there's a physical fragility of the web we all recognize, but there's also a social fragility of the bait of the ankabut, because Allah mentions it as a house, not a web per se. He mentions it as a house, and a house is your home, is a social place where you find your sukoon. So does anyone know what the black widow does?
Eats her husband.
It eats her husband. Yes, sisters are laughing. I hope nobody wants to kill their husbands. So the black widow will actually basically mate with the male spider, and then after that, it will literally eat the spider. It will actually literally eat, it will devour him. And so they say, look at the fragility of this house from two angles. It's so weak physically, socially, it's the weakest thing. What kind of relationship is that? So some people say this inna awhan al-buyuti labaytul ankabut may be allusion to this. Well, alam, I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I just thought I'd mention that there. So this is Surah Al-Ankabut. Surah Al-Ankabut. We move to Surah Rum. Surah Rum. And we'll end with this surah and an activity. I did say we'll get to an activity. We'll end with this surah and this activity here, inshallah ta'ala. So, Surah Rum is all about the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in creation. That is clearly what Surah Rum, the theme is there. Reflect on the signs of Allah and be convinced in His promise. And so the promise of Allah is mentioned, that's a strong theme about the akhirah and the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's the signs of Allah in history, there's the signs of Allah in the world around you, and there's the signs of Allah within yourself as well. And so it starts off with the prediction of the Romans defeating the Persians. And this is interesting that, the Quran has Surah Rum, and it's one of the civilizations that have continued up until now. I mean, obviously not the Romans and the Byzantines, but there are kind of the inheritors of that civilization continue to this time, and will continue until the Day of Judgment. There's a lot of hadith about the way in which the Muslim Ummah will engage with the Romans or the people of Rum or their descendants. And so this is the fact that the Romans always seem to bounce back, because they were down at this time and then they come back. So the bouncing back of the Romans is interesting. Amr ibn al-As, radiallahu anh, he has an interesting statement where he actually praises the Roman civilization for a number of qualities that they have. And of them, they take care of their weak and their vulnerable. They do not allow their kings and their rulers to be oppressive. They keep them in check. They're very resilient when it comes to trial and difficulty and that sort of thing. So they mention these sorts of things, and you can see some of those elements within Western civilization even to this day as well. But this prediction obviously comes true. في بضع سنين, in a few years, and bid'ah in Arab, and if you look in the lexicon, 3 to 9, and that's basically the time in which they started to reconquer the land, and when they finished reconquering the land was in literally 3 to 9 years. So it was a prediction that was given right at that particular time as well. And what's interesting is when Allah says here, وَيَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, that is the day which the believers will rejoice. And what's interesting is that during this period of time was also the Battle of Badr. So it was actually a double prediction here, that the believers will rejoice with what? بِنَصْرِ اللَّهِ, with the victory of Allah, referring to their own victory there. What I want us to do is to break up into groups, inshallah. This is the very famous, so Surah Ar-Rum is very famous at weddings. Why? Because there's a very famous verse that you always hear in weddings. Everyone always recites these verses, which is the verses of Surah Ayah 21. Ayah 21. ومن آياتها أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآية لقوم يتفكرون. By the way, I heard of the news of an engagement of two people that usually come to Faith Circle. I don't know if they want it to be that public, so I want to embarrass them, but they know who they are. Congratulations. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you both. And may Allah ta'ala make you the coolness of each other's eyes. Ameen. Just reminded me as we were reading this ayah here. ومن آياتها أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا. So the first ayah that's mentioned here is marriage. Then Allah says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. There are signs for people who give thought. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Then Allah mentions the signs of the creation of the heavens and the earth, the diversity of the languages. It's the signs of those who have knowledge. And then Allah mentions the sign of the night and the day, and it's the sign of those who listen. Then Allah mentions the lightning, the fear and the aspiration, and bringing back life from the dead from the water that comes from the sky, and that's a sign for people who have aql. So, for these verses 21 to 24, I want you to think about, why does Allah mention that quality in regards to the sign? So why does Allah connect, for example, the sign of marriage to fikr, yatafakkarun, people who give thought? Why the sign of lightning of those who use aql? Why the sign of the night and the day of those who listen? So do you understand the task here? So Allah is mentioning, these are signs for the people who know. These are signs for the people who reflect. These are signs for the people who listen. These are signs for the people who use their aql. Why are those particular qualities connected with those particular signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So I'll give you guys about 5-ish or so minutes to think about it, inshallah. And if you come up with a hypothesis for each, and we'll take it up. This is something Ibn al-Qayyim actually reflects upon, and he has his own reflection with it. We'll see what you guys come up with, inshallah. Break up into groups, inshallah, and we can have a bit of a ponder, some tadabbur. So just as a bit of a, helpful methodology, I would say first think about what are the signs that you're meant to get from the thing that's referenced, and then connect it to what's mentioned there. Why this one in particular? So think about, what are the signs of the diversity of the tongues, for example? Why is that a sign? The signs of the night and the day, for example, and the alternation. Were you guys able to crack the code? Were you able to crack the code? So Haris is trying to crack Sulaiman. I don't know what that was about. Just literally just pushed him, like, what are you talking about? Intense debate. Okay, so Bismillah. Let's start with the first one. ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآية لقوم يتفكرون. Any thoughts and reflections about this connection? Yes?
I'm not sure, but
That's okay.
is that like
that marriage itself is a complete miracle, that two stranger people who just come together and become the closest to each other.
Yes.
Family. And I think آيات القوم يتفكرون is for these people who reflect and think, because marriage needs lots of
okay, beautiful. Okay.
Reviewing your decisions and sacrifice.
I really like that, sister. Jazakumullah khairan. So what she said was that for marriage to be successful and generate the mawadda and rahmah mentioned there, requires a lot of introspection from both parties, a lot of tafakkur and thought and pondering about the ways in which you're relating with each other, communication, all these sorts of things. And so there's a burden of tafakkur that is required in order for a person to have a successful marriage. Jazakumullah khairan. That's a beautiful reflection. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Oh, for the same one?
The same one, yeah, same one.
Oh, yeah, we basically said the same thing.
Said the same thing, yeah. Very convenient, especially because you didn't put your hand up at the beginning.
One requires reflection in order to understand marriage and relationships. Yeah, like this.
Okay, very good. One requires reflections to understand marriage and relationships. Anything else? Yes?
I kind of connect that to thought and reflection. So when you reflect, you realize your mistakes or the mistake, and you forgive them, which is the mercy part.
Beautiful.
That in turn creates more affection as well.
Beautiful. So the more you think about things and have proper tafakkur about what's happened, and say someone's done something wrong or you've done your own wrong, then it results in basically you being able to forgive, which then generates more rahmah and which is rahmah, and that generates the mawadda. Very good. So you guys are connecting fikr to the success of the marriage, but here we're talking about the idea of the ayah itself, of what is witnessed, why that's connected to fikr. You guys are getting close to that same point that Ibn Qayyim is saying. Yes?
World of like survival of the fittest, people just trying to increase their own gain. There's this actual love and rahmah felt between people, which is reason to think, why is that?
Okay, very good. So the idea that the notion of survival of the fittest and the evolution, blah, 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 is all kind of broken down with the idea of a committed, loyal couple that is loyal to each other, and this basically is a means for a person to think and wonder, what is it that is bringing these two people together and where is it coming from? Basically, Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions something very similar here. What he says is that the sukoon of the man with the woman basically is based on their connection of love and mercy, and this is something that is amr batin. It's something that's not, you can't see the mercy, you can't see the love in and of itself. It's something that's hidden, in fact. bi'ayn al-fikra wal basira, and basically it can only be perceived with the eye of insight and the eye of tafakkur, basically. So basically when a person looks at the wisdom and the rahmah and the qudra that comes from this, then it enables them to recognize the true Lord who basically put this in their fitrah to bring these people together and whatnot, and to generate this love and affection. But because the love and affection is hidden, and because marriage in general is a private thing as well, then fikr is mentioned, which is also something that is internal as well. Internal essentially. Okay, second one, which is the signs of the creation of the heavens and the earth and the diversity of the tongues and knowledge. Yes?
I'm thinking between the parallel of life between heavens and the earth. So in earth, there is a diversity of languages and colors.
Yes.
So we're experiencing a taste of that. But then whatever we taste here, it's going to be in heavens as well. However, it's at a higher level.
Interesting. Samawat here is not jannat, by the way. So the heavens is skies. It's not about Jannah. So samawat are the skies. So that's like what we see up in the air, the atmosphere, and then in space and whatnot. So it's the idea of the macro and the micro. And so the macro samawat, in the earth, we witness the diversity of Allah's creation in our languages and in people. And in the heavens, what the sister is saying, there's possibly even more diversity out there as well. Yes?
It essentially takes knowledge to truly understand and appreciate the creation of the heavens and the earth.
Very good.
Yeah, so only people with true sound knowledge.
Very good.
Understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, cosmology and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was very good. So cosmology and sociology or anthropology. These are two massive fields of knowledge that are being described here. For a person to appreciate the complexities of the universe, it's the person who studied it. Or the complexities of the ecosystems and the earth. You know, we were just at, last weekend, we were at, or 2 weekends ago, we were at this Zaytuna farm. Have you guys heard of the Zaytuna farm? It's in northern New South Wales. One Path did a documentary on it actually. And basically he's a permaculturalist. He became Muslim. He's a world-renowned permaculturalist. Like governments consult on him on how to basically manage their spaces and their lands and stuff like this. He became Muslim, mashallah. He married a Palestinian woman. But in any case, we're just exposed to this vast knowledge of the earth and all the different ways in which things grow and how they connect with each other and the nutrients that come through. So the knowledge that comes from the cosmology to the earth, to the ecosystem, science basically. So the science and the humanities is what's being put here, right? Samawati wal ard, science, and then the waqtilafi alsinatikum wa alwanikum, that's the humanities. And so science and the humanities are referenced here, and for a person to appreciate that, language itself and where it comes from and the complexities of language, you have to study it. And same thing as well with the people and their diversity as well. And so this is something that's linked to knowledge. Okay, in the interest of time, next one is sleeping in the night and seeking the bounty in the day. Some of you guys are thinking, wait a second, for me it's reversed. Someone's nodding, it's like, yes. I'm up all night and I'm sleeping in the day. Anyways, what did you guys say to this one? Yes?
Yeah, I think it's just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that this is how He designed us to sleep at night and sleep like.
What does this have to do with listening?
Because it's only for the people who listen that will follow that or like get the benefit of that.
Okay. Yes?
If you listen to your body, you'll actually want to sleep in the night.
If you listen to your body, you'll want to sleep in the night. Okay, interesting. Yes?
Like it's more lively and noisy during the day if you listen for it.
It's lively in the day, so you hear the bustle of the people, and in the night it's quiet. Beautiful. I think that's an interesting point and connection there, that people might think this is a visual sign, but actually there's sounds of the night and the sounds of the day. Yes?
To connect to that, it mentions bounties,
yeah.
As in there is risk in the morning and not at night, so the people who are rested.
They don't see, oh man, you're really going at the people who are the night owls here. As a former night owl, rehabilitated night owl, begrudgingly, just because you have to go to work, you got to go to work, you got to get up early, you've got to go to sleep on time. It is what it is. I take offense to that, but you're right. It is important to recognize that point, that the fadl is mentioned in the morning, and that's where the blessing is as well, and that's the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed it. Yes?
Is it because the only sense that is working is hearing during sleeping?
The only sense working when you sleep is which one? The ears, right? But technically touch as well.
Yeah.
That's how, because people can wake people up like this. So sense and hearing, but hearing is one of the ones that are kept open and not the eyes. Very good, very good. Anyone from the brothers? Any interesting things about this one? Yes? No. I mean, you put your hand up. I mean, what did you expect was going to happen? It's looking so afraid, like, oh my God, I can't believe that worked. Yes?
The phrase seeking of his bounty and people who listen, it sort of reminds me of birds. Obviously in Australia you get woken up pretty early by the birds.
Oh my God, yeah. Which birds wake you up? The kookaburras? For me, it's the crows. Oh my God, those are the worst. If you, after Fajr, if you try to go back to sleep, it's like, oh my God. Anyways, yes.
I don't know if it's in the Quran or Hadith of like the bird goes out, seeks his bounty, and comes back.
Yeah, the tawakkul Hadith, yeah.
It just reminded me of people who just wake up and listen to hear the birds getting up.
What you've said is what it's not exactly what Ibn al-Qayyim said, but it's the application of what Ibn al-Qayyim said. So what does Ibn al-Qayyim say? He says that making the night for sleep and the day for basically your livelihood and seeking Allah's bounty is an ayah for people who listen. وَهُوَ سَمْعُ الْفَهَمِ وَتَدَبُّرُ هذه الآيات وارتباطها بها جعلت آية له مما أخبرت به الرسل من حياة العباد. So he's saying that the listening here is referring to the sam'a of revelation and connecting what they learn of revelation about the life حياة العباد بعد موتهم وقيامهم من قبورهم كما أحياهم سبحانه. The life and death of the next life. So basically the people who listen is referring to the people who listen to revelation and make the connection to what they see in the world. And so he explains that the idea of the night and the day and how a person goes to sleep and then they wake up. It's a minor resurrection. That a person is asleep, it's the minor death and they come back to life. That cycle, that ayah of that alternation is not recognized except for people who recognize and who listen to the verses and make that connection. So the sam'a here is the fahm of wahi, the fahm of revelation, and connecting it to what they see there. So that's the connection there. That's the true sign that you're seeing in the alternation of the night and the day. It's the idea of life and then qiyamah, life and then qiyamah, death, and all the whole life cycle that's there in your life cycle. Every mini day you play out is a reminder of the Day of Judgment. Okay, last one. And of his signs is the lightning, which causes fear and aspiration. Now, why does the lightning cause fear and aspiration? Before we continue, what is that referring to? Khawfan wa tama'a. It's a phrase that's used a few times in the Quran when Allah describes lightning. Why does lightning bring fear and hope?
Because rain can either revive the earth or it can bring about destruction, or can be.
But it's not rain. This is lightning.
Oh,
lightning comes before rain, so it kind of.
Not here. You're right, though. You're right in general. Yes, that's very good.
It's the hope of rain.
Very good. Excellent. So the lightning and the fear connection, that's quite clear with everyone, right? You guys are all terrified of lightning, right? I think lightning looks cool. I don't know. Anyways. So obviously the fear of the lightning when it flashes and the thunder sound is a fear, but the knowledge, as you guys were saying, of, hey, is there rain coming now? Especially to the person in the desert of Arabia, that's hope, isn't it? So that's the hope and the fear. And this is so beautiful because that's life, isn't it? There's times in which the lightning comes in the khawf, and then there's the hope of the ease after. Inna ma'al usri yusra. Anytime you're going through an usr, realize that's the lightning, but Allah doesn't send the lightning down on its own without the rain that comes after it, to bring life back to the dead, to bring light to the darkness, to bring ease to your hardship. And that's the rhythm of life. The rhythm of life is the peaks and the troughs. The rhythm of life is this. Allah mentions this many times, that وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. We will test you with good and bad as both a trial and test. Up and down, up and down. That is the rhythm of life. And you guys have all witnessed that in your own lives. The ease and the hardship, and the ease and the hardship, and the ease and the hardship. So you don't get too high when the ease comes and says, that's it, I'm done now. You know, okay, I got to prepare for a time in which maybe it won't be as easy. This is the rhythm of life. And it's actually beautiful because it kind of connects with everything around us. Because everything is also in systole and diastole, with the squeeze and the constriction and the expansion. I mean, just look at your heart. It's literally all it does is squeeze and open, squeeze and open, squeeze and open. Bast, which is the expansion, and qabd and bast. Allah is basid and qabid. And you see the reflection of this in His creation. You see the waves on the ocean. They come forward and they come out and they recede. They come in and they come out and they recede. You see the rhythm of the night and the day. The day comes and the night comes. You see this reflection of the up and the down, of the bast and the qabd. You see this reflection everywhere. It's the rhythm of life. It's the rhythm of creation. It's actually a song was written, Nasheed, by Dawood Ornsby Ali, called The Rhythm of Surrender. You guys heard this one? He's a Canadian. Can you hear the rhythm of Allah's creation? Okay. I'm not going to try to sing it, but you can check it out. It's called The Rhythm of Surrender. It's beautiful, and it reflects this aspect here. It's good for the kids. Dawood Hornsby himself. It's all like him. What he writes are kid nasheeds. Like that's the way they sound. They're very simple and they're for kids. But the lyrics are clearly for adults, because I grew up listening to them, and then when I hear it now, I'm like, oh my God, that is one of the most deep and profound things I've ever heard. So you realize he was actually writing for the adults, but as a kid you kind of grew up listening to it, but then you realize, oh my God, that's a very deep nasheed. Anyways, Dawood Hornsby Ali. I don't know, I had no idea I was going to plug that today, but anyways. Rhythm of creation, that's why. Yes. So anyways, that is the khawf and the tama'ah. And even that, the fear and the hope. This is the rhythm. Okay. What did you guys say of its connection to aql? Yes.
I would reflect this saying, as God brings life to earth, He also can rise dead from their death.
Yes.
As well. And reflecting on what you have said, khawfan wa tama'an, it also shows us how we should worship God.
Yes, khawf and tama'a is also the emotions of worship, hope and fear, yes. How does that have to do with aql?
Like seeing how God is bringing life to a dead earth, He also, which means a way of thinking, aql.
Very good, excellent. So the idea that the sign itself, to appreciate it, which is bringing life from the dead and then recognizing a creator behind this, that step, although it's something you can see, the second step is requiring the aql to basically make that leap. Anyone else had anything else to share on this particular verse here before we conclude?
Bring us back on the day of Qiyamah.
Yes, exactly. Bringing us back on the Day of Judgment. So basically all of these verses, as you can see, they point to a function of our mind that is meant to be active when we witness our life unfold in front of us. Like look at the things that are being described here, right? Marriage. Like things that are seemingly mundane. When you're with your spouse and just the mundane moments that you have or romantic moments that you have, those are actually sacred moments. And those are actually moments where you can appreciate the signs of Allah's names and attributes. But it's only for people who engage in deep fikr. Then you've got the alternation, you've got, as we said, science and the humanities, right? The nerds amongst us, those who are interested in learning and those who are interested in going to school and whatnot. You think you're going to school, I'm just getting an education so I can get a job and whatnot. No, you're learning either humanities or science or nature. And that all goes back to learning about Allah's creation, which goes back to learning about Allah's will, which goes back to learning about Allah's names and attributes. So that's the idea of ilm that's mentioned there. So whether you're studying, whether you're just living life and enjoying moments with family, whether you're going literally through the rat race, right? Some people say, oh my God, it's just the rat race, the days are just a blur, just night and day comes through. Then Allah is literally describing here the quote-unquote the rat race, right? That everyone talks about, right? Go home, get to sleep, get up, go to work, go home, go to sleep. In that mundanity, what are those signs? For people who reflect on revelation and connect it to those mundane experiences. And then in moments that are more rare, they're not as common, like lightning, doesn't come all the time. The season of spring doesn't come all the time, where you witness these things. There are moments in life that come that have a unique message for you, a unique sign for you to reflect on. The hardships of life, the trials and the difficulties of life, all of these are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the people who have knowledge, for the people who reflect, for the people who listen to the revelation and connect with it, and for the people who use their aql. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who are able to benefit from the ayat in His book and the ayat around us. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu feek. We'll end it there, we won't do Q&A.